Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Your Turn, the interview series by Your Turn, an acceleration program designed exclusively for board game creators, both individual and studios alike. Our mission is to nurture the growth of the board game industry with a special focus on the Vietnamese community.
Your turn.
I'm Iona Nguyễn, the show host. I'm a board game creator and the founder of Brainy Hearty Studio, a partner of Your Turn program. Today, we have the honor of speaking with the legendary Dr. Reiner Knizia, the father of almost 800 board games, ranging from quick 15 minutes games to deep 3-hour games. Some of his titles, such as Lord of the Rings, Lost Cities, and Modern Art, have been my favorites. He is, without doubt, legends in the board game industry. As a newcomer to board game design myself, I am so thrilled to be with you, Dr. Knizia.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, Dr. Knizia, you became a full-time game designer in 1997 after quitting your job from the board of a large international bank. What was the story back then? What inspired such a significant career change?
Well, I must say that the games have always been very close to my heart. I already started playing as a little child. I started inventing my own games simply to play as a little child. And this has accompanied me throughout my whole life, throughout university and throughout my banking career. And both sides became very successful, so the games and the career in the industry. And eventually I came to the conclusion that I do not want to handle both anymore because I'm more a person who likes to concentrate on one thing and really do it very good. I understood I need to take a decision, either go the management direction or to go the games direction, and I decided to follow my heart. It was a very well thought through, long-term decision, and I have never regretted it.
That's a great story, and thanks for sharing about this. Um, and I want to share that I asked this question because I myself also quit my job in a tech company just a few months ago to pursue a career as a board game creator. And I found myself increasingly drawn to the creative freedom and intellectual process of creating games. But I be honest, just 3 months into this new life, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed at times, and I wonder if I have made the right decisions. Did you ever experience doubts or uncertainty when you made the switch?
No, I did not, because I took this decision relatively late in my gaming career as well. So I had already won the German Game Prize at that time. I had already built my network to the various publishers. I took a very early decision not only to work with one country, for example, Germany or England, where I was located, but really to make myself independent of individual markets. And that network was already built. I had the contacts, I had games in the pipeline. So it wasn't a jump into, as we say, into the cold water. It was something which was reasonably established. And so no, I never had doubts. I knew I would not be able to go back into management because once you have a high position and you go out, it's very hard to get back. So um, this was what I wanted to do, and I'm still living my dream, if you want.
That is so inspiring. Thank you so much. I have another newbie questions. Since the day I started, I have been wondering if I truly have some talents for game design and how far I can go in this field. So, Dr. Kinesiia, as you had the opportunity to interact with creators from all over the world, have you noticed any common traits among them? And a follow-up questions, do you think anyone can become a board game creator? Is it a talent that some are born with or some can develop through training and experience?
Yes, that is the big question for everything. If it is nature or nurture, so is it a talent you have or is it a talent you develop? Maybe it's both. Nobody can, for these talents, ever say it's not only game design. Where does it really come from? I think it goes hand in hand. If there is an interest, if you have an early mission to do something. You get a lot of training, and you don't see it as work because it's fun. And there are statements of you have to input 5,000 or 10,000 hours to become a master. And if this is hard work for you, don't do it. If you love it and if it energizes you, then it goes by itself. You know, the great violin players, they play it as children. The great tennis stars play as children. And so they develop this mastery. I think people will find out quite early in their careers what suits them and particularly what does not suit them. I think I could never become a guitar or violin player, and I would find out in the first hours that that's not mine. And so with this respect, I think it is much more follow your calling as part of the answer. The other answer is there a common trait? Is there something which you can identify? And I mean, the academics write lots of books about these things. I'm not sure if there is really something which you can prove. You see, what I really like about our industry, in comparison to many other industries, is that people join our industry because they love the product, they love the games. And they come from many different backgrounds. You know, there are illustrators there who say, I don't know how the game goes, but I'm just drawing the map and it will develop while I draw the map. There are people who come from a scientific background, which I have as well. And so I call them all the colorful birds in our industry, which makes it so exciting. If I compare it with the banking world or also with the IT world, people just come up one black and white painting, one chimney, and so they are more the same. They have all got the same education, they have all got the same thinking. This is not true, not all of them are all the same, but it's much more aligned than we have it in our wonderful games industry. So it's really look at your calling. If it works for you, do it. If it doesn't work for you, find what really works for you.
Amazing. I think it's very inspiring. And your answer really gave me some motivation to keep pushing forward. Thank you so much. Yeah. And so now for individuals who are passionate about game design but lacking experience or resources, how can they navigate the challenges of establishing themselves and gaining recognition within the competitive board game industry?
I don't think it makes sense to lay out a great master plan for the next 50 or 500 years how you want to develop. It is a step-by-step process. And as I say, don't jump into the cold water before you have tested the temperature and how deep it is. So take it step by step. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, then something else will develop. But it's also, don't throw away your day job until you are secure that you can really do something. And you don't need to, because a lot of people, most of the people start as a hobby, and they see what they can do. They see if they can like it. They like it. They also see if they can produce something which the publishers want, because it's not just having a good idea. It is understanding if this idea carries, and then understanding if there is a market for it, one idea. But an idea is not what you sell. You sell a finished prototype, a completely worked out game. So it's not, oh, I'll talk to the publisher and see if they like the idea and then I'll work out the game. This is never going to work. It is, here, I'm sure this is a good idea. I will work on it diligently for many months to make it into a perfect game. And then it is also, apart from this design idea and the development process, it is then also understanding the market, understanding which publisher is the right one, and also understanding what is actually the target group for my game. It's very hard to design games which are good for everybody. But sometimes if you want to be the perfect game for everything, then you are nothing. So the more you focus and say, okay, this is a game for the gamers, or this is a game for the general family, then you have a much better view, and when you test it and develop it, then you can really target it and fine tune it towards this target group and towards a publisher maybe you have in mind. So this is the general process. You cannot plan ahead because you never know what comes. You never know where your interests go. You may find out that it's a nice hobby, but it's too much for a profession, and then you also like to play the violin, and then you become a great musician. Yes, so it's, I mean, game design is an art, and painting is an art, and playing music is an art. There's many different ways of expressing art, and you need to ripen. I mean, how do you paint a good picture? I mean, everybody who looks from the outside says, okay, yeah, everybody can paint, but what makes a Picasso? What makes the great pictures? And Picasso didn't set out and say, I'll become a great painter. He started step by step. And I think that's what you need to do. It's keep your doors open, keep it flexible, and follow the path which is most successful and, after all, most inspiring and encouraging for you.
Amazing. Yeah, I learned a lot from about that. But then it comes to my next question about ideation. So you mentioned that everything starts with an idea. So how do you know if an idea is a good one, and where do your ideas often come from?
This is a very good question. I feel that when the design and the game development is in your heart, it's also in your eyes. And when you look around in the world, you'll see lots of ideas. Now, it is important to understand that our games are a mirror of the world. And what people felt exciting 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, may no longer be exciting for them today. The world moves on, and the games reflect that. So it is really keeping an eye open. What inspires people? What do they actually want to spend their time with? And therefore, what should be in the games? So that has to do with the thematic challenges. It also has to do with the game mechanics. People have different mechanics. People are less patient today. They want short rules, quick access, and then the dynamics of the game really needs to move fast. If you look at the traditional, very old games like chess or Go, Mahjong, all these games have been born in a different time, and that means time was slower, and so the game moves slower, and it takes a while until it develops. These games are still around because they have reached a very critical mass and a very strong position in our culture. If you today wanted to newly market one of these games, it would not work. So you need to really see what is relevant, and experience helps. But for me, a very big insight, it's a trivial one, but for me, it was a very deep insight that I will try to start with something innovative. Because if you start with something mundane, just something which is already around many times, and then how do you get something innovative and creative into that? And if you have a sparkling idea and say, oh, that's something new, I've not seen that before, then I think it's a very good starting point. As I say, game design is not a science, it's an art. And so if you take the scientific approach and say, I have a methodology, and this is my first step, and then I take the next 5 steps and the tick list, tick, 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 you will always come out at the same end. But as an innovative person, as an artist, you don't want to come out at the same end. You want to come out somewhere else. So you need to leave the trodden path. And sometimes a new challenge is really something that inspires this. I'll give you 2 examples. You mentioned The Lord of the Rings. When I had the great opportunity to work on this great Tolkien masterpiece, I knew that I needed to be true to the fans. And the fans, of course, are reading the book. And so they have a certain viewpoint. The viewpoint is we are the fellowship. We are not the bad side, we are the good side. So I realized I cannot really make a competitive game because we are all together. And so today it's very commonplace to have cooperative games. At that time, when I did it, there were no serious cooperative games. And I remember very well when the first critics saw it and said, yeah, you can play it once and then it will be boring. And then they found out differently. And I think the Lord of the Rings actually was the cornerstone and the setting of a new trend. And this is the challenge I'm talking about. It is taking on the challenge and forcing yourself to leave the past. And I think taking on this challenge and seeing I need to do this, even though it hasn't been done before, is what creates the new thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Yes, there is no guarantee, but you can only try and really do not stay in your comfort zone. This is and sometimes you need the outside pressure, like with the Lord of the Rings, or like when the smartphone came. Suddenly you have the small little screens and nobody reads rules, so it needs to be self-explanatory. And these challenges are wonderful because they force you to stay innovative. So you asked me, how do I see a good idea? It's a bit of experience, it's the innovation in it, but the good idea is only the little sparking point, the big hard work. It's not work, it's fun, but the big energy and time comes afterwards.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing this story about the Lord of the Rings. So, your ability to consistently produce such engaging and enduring games is truly impressive. In fact, you have created over 800 games in the last 3 decades. That means more than 25 games per year on average. I know for a lot of game designers, it would take them from 6 months to years to develop one game. So, how do you manage to be so productive?
Well, the period goes back a little bit longer because even before I became a full-time professional, I did a lot of designs, and I know my first two games were actually accompanied with, who were published in 1990, were accompanied by a book because I had a lot of games played just for fun, and I've published a number of games in magazines, and I actually ran a play-by-mail magazine. People don't even know what that is today because that was pre-email. So you didn't write emails with your turns. You wrote a letter and then you put the results in it was archaic. It was Stone Age. So this is going back a long time. But you're quite right. I would say, every little adds to it and adds to it, and the consistency and persistency makes one game after another. I didn't set out to do 800 games, but one comes after the other, and it is the dedication. I mean, this is my life. This is where I spend my energy. This is how I organize my life. The time and organizing it well, being when am I best creative, and also understanding that developing games is playtesting, a lot of playtesting. That is the heart of developing. You cannot do it with experience and calculate fun. You need to experience the fun. So we are playing every day. Every day, almost every day, some players would come in and we would play and test the games, discuss the games. And of course, you're saying it's about 20, maybe 15, 20 games a year. There are small games there are bigger games there. It's also a question how you count. Do you count a game in a magazine? So the number 800, you can vary forward and backward a little bit. But it is really sticking with it and building game after game. And it's not that I work on one game. A game takes many months. But I'm sometimes cursed by the many ideas. So I have too many ideas, and then comes all the energy to put into it. So we would play a number of games every week with different groups, and they would develop until one is finished, and then a new one would come in. Some things get stuck, so it falls behind, and it's always the ones which are most. I think that's also a very important point here. It's a good selection process. One of the dangers is to fall in love with your design and then have the sunk cost fallacy and saying, I've invested so much time in it, it has to work. You can't force it. So in my system, I have always too many games on the go. And that means always these will come onto the table, which I find most fascinating. Yesterday we tested and we played 4 or 5 games. They were shorter games, and one of them didn't really work. And one of them is almost finished. So which one am I going to take out? Today I'm going to take out the one which is almost finished and say, oh yes, I know what to do with it. The one which didn't work is there and say, oh, I need some more time. We won't play it today. And so the ones which are most promising, which are most successful, come to the foreground, and they essentially push the other one away. And I think the focus on those which work best and promise the most is very good. And for this, you need a choice and you need many around. And that's where I'm very grateful that these ideas flow, and that it's, as I say, I'm cursed by the ideas, but I'm very grateful for the curse.
That's amazing. Yeah, your dedications to your games is truly impressive. And so I'm curious, is this one of your secrets in game designing? And how could you make you have achieved a lot of success over your career? And so what are your secrets in game designing, and how could you make your games like so resonate with a lot of people out there?
Well, I think this is the biggest reward you can get as a designer, that a lot of people love the games and play the games. And not every of my game is wonderfully successful. It is, if you have 800, there are some quiet ones, there are some nice ones, and there are some very successful ones. And if you have a number of shots or number of tries, sometimes something hits. And it's like in marketing and in advertising, when people say only 20% of the advertising makes the whole job, but you never know which 20% it is. And so I can all but try and make good games and then build. And that's another way of saying build on the success. I'm building on the successful designs which develop nicely, but I'm then also building on the games which resonate, and that takes sometimes a bit of luck. So when we sit and say, okay, we will have new games on the fair coming out, which one will really be very successful? And we don't know. And so it's a bit of a luck involved, like in the movie industry. Movie industry never knows which one is going there. So therefore, they call it the blockbuster, because they wait until the first weekend when it's released, and when then people queue around the block, they call it a blockbuster. That's the successful one. They don't know before. You have an inclination, and you know if you have a strong IP or a strong story like the Lord of the Rings, of course there is more attention to this, but it still needs to take off. And sometimes you get big surprises. Our little card game Llama was nominated for the Game of the Year, and suddenly we are selling lots and lots of these games, and we get lots of feedback on this. And this is what I'm saying is, once there is something which you see through to good work and through to luck and whatever else comes together, and once you have something which resonates, then build on this. And so then build a family. And uh, then we now have just coming out this year the Llama Cadabra. So it is a second game which is a little bit more extreme to play, and build the family. And those games which have a first edition, and then you never know, why did it not work? Was it the graphics? Was it just the wrong time? Then they won't build a family, but they may go off the market in 2 3 years, and then I will have a look at it, and sometimes I rework it, or sometimes I think, well, let's give it a second try. And then maybe it doesn't go to a publisher, it goes on Kickstarter, and that's the right thing, because you have lots of stretch goals and there are extra things. So it is the same process of building on the success, building on your strengths. I think one of the big, and this is a side remark, one of the big fallacies is when people try to margin out their weaknesses. Then you work on your weaknesses and you become from bad to acceptable. But what's this? You want to become from good to excellent. So this is what I experienced in life. Build on your strengths and build on the good ideas, build on the good games, and spend your time there.
Totally got it. Yeah, I think that's an excellent advice for aspiring creators out there. Now, you started creating games since 1997, and by the way, it is a year that I was born. How have you observed board game industries evolve during the last 3 decades? Moreover, how have you adapted and evolved yourself to stay relevant in an ever-changing landscape?
It is, as I already explained a little bit, it is first of all going with open eyes through the world and accepting these challenges. So that means, of course, I would like to set all the trends in the gaming industry, but there are many excellent people around. So sometimes, like with the uh, cooperative games, or also with the abstract games. When we did Ingenious, the Einfach Genial game, publishers had the opinion abstract games do not sell. And then came Blockus and our Ingenious, and suddenly we had two Blockus is from another designer. Then we had two very successful games, and suddenly the publishers thought, there is something to it, because sometimes when you put a strong license on it, um, then the license may go out of fashion. If you put a theme on it, people are no longer interested in the theme and it wears off. Whereas if you have an abstract game stands there, yes. If you look at the classic games, they're all abstract, yes, because the theme does not hold forever. So um, it's how do you stay relevant in the industry? It is just understanding um, that you have to push yourself, understanding that if you cannot influence all the trends, and I'm very well aware that I cannot, but then it's also understanding where can I make a contribution to a trend. And so when legacy games came up, I did not really understand what does that do and why would people want to do it. I was proven wrong, and the legacy games took off. And then I said, well, but the legacy games are relatively complex. They are usually lots of materials, lots of rules so that you can play it. And I said, can I not open the door to other people, to the general casual players? And so I worked on my city and now my island, which means we have now a little legacy game which you can play in 20, 30 minutes. And you have lots of different chapters. And there's no waiting time. That's the other thing, because everybody plays at the same time. And so sometimes it's just opening the doors. The same with a deck building game. Deck building became very this is one of the mechanisms I'm saying where mechanisms evolve and then they become very popular. And so you can't ignore them. But on the other hand, I just don't want to run after them or copy them. So again, the question is, what can I do? When I played Dominion, this is the archetype of the deck building game, I actually had some problems initially understanding the game and getting a grasp of the concept. And of course, after a while, you know it and so on, but I remembered that. And so I said, can I not, again, open the door to other people? And Dominion is a relatively abstract, Dominion is a wonderful design. Dominion is a relatively abstract process where you build this engine with the cards, and it's a real challenge more for the gamers. And so I said, if I introduce a board, and it's a kind of a race, El Dorado, to the gold, then it is becoming much clearer. So I have my cards and I go through the jungle. Yes, so I need a jeep and I need some machetes and so on. But then I see there comes a river. I see the track, yes. So how do I get across the river? I need a boat. So that means I need new cards in the deck to get over that river. And then I have crossed the river. Good. So I have the boat card. I bought the boat card. I was able to get over the river. I'm happy. And now comes a desert on the track. And so now I'm walking along a desert. And then I ask myself, why am I still carrying the boat? I don't need the boat in the desert. So it's quite clear that some cards I want to get in, and some cards, it's like water through the desert, and some cards I want to kick out again. And just by giving this very natural board, it makes it very intuitive, even for the casual players, what they are doing with the cards. And again, these are points to go through the world with open eyes and see where you can do your contribution. And sometimes it's building on good designs of others, but not copying them, but adding something significant to it. So that's somewhat the ambition. Of course, it's always the ambition to start with something completely new and do a completely new line and influence the game world of gaming for the next 10 years. One can dream, but it's not so easy.
Gotcha. So the key is to have like an open mind and always keep yourself, pushing yourself to growth.
Yes, it is. This is, I mean, if you want to stay relevant, look what people want to do, and also make sure when you playtest the games that you're not playtesting the games for yourself, but playtest them for the current gaming community, for the current target group. And that's different than 10 or 20 years ago, as I said. So play with not only play in your studio, but then also go out and play with the people. Or when you make a children's game, go to the kindergarten, go to the school, early school, and play with the kids. You will get a lot of, well, you will get destroyed prototypes. They leak them and they do everything with them. But this is part of it, but you will get a lot of very valuable feedback, which you cannot get in any other way. So stay in tune, stay in contact with the community and the market if you want. Yes.
Amazing. Okay, and so as the board game industry will continue to evolve, are there any emerging trends that aspiring creators should be mindful of right now?
Well, we already alluded to some of them with deck building or with legacy games, or even further back with the cooperative games. There are many marketing people who want to forecast what is happening. They always have a good explanation why the past happened how it is, but their forecasts into the future are usually wrong, which also means, is the explanation for the past correct? Because you know the outcome, so you can always get an explanation, but if the explanation is correct, or if it just happened in a different way, is unclear. So what am I saying? I believe it is extremely difficult to really foresee trends. I mean, there are some very trivial ones, which I already said. The games are a mirror of our world. When the electronics, when the computers came, when the mobile phone came, it was very clear that the games would go there. I mean, this is a natural point. When the globalization happened, it was very clear that games will go more global and that there are companies who will try to cover many markets. And then there are niche players. Trying to cover many markets means you have to tone down on the common denominator and you cannot make the game so special. So you also maybe lose some nice, interesting cultural aspects to the games. So there are some trends there. Also, people have less attention span. So there are some global things. But when you're more alluding to, well, what is the next great line of games, what is the next trend? I mean, Magic the Gathering is one of the things which came completely out of the blue, the collectible card games. Yes, and it is a wonderful story because, of course, I know Richard Garfield, who invented the game, became a multi-millionaire through the game. When I visited him in Seattle in America, when he just started to do the game, he showed me the game. And I told him, this is not going to fly. This is too complex. It's not going to go anywhere. So ask the experts and they will know. I was completely wrong. But it's a good example. Who could foresee that Richard Garfield comes up with a collectible card game, which then creates a whole industry? Factories were built to create all these cards. There was a whole industry of collectible card games, which still is. Made lots of people millionaires. And very rich, and deservedly. So how can you foresee that? I think trends come more from an accidental success. Something just simply crops up. Nobody could guarantee that collectible card games become successful. Magic could just have gone along, nobody looks at it. You never know. It needs to have the critical mass, it needs to grow. And once it grows, and then the publishers look at it. cooperative games are. We can do abstract games. Two-player games would work. Now, two-player games, yes. Or suddenly collectible card games. Once you have something, once it's successful, the industry will turn towards it, and it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, because you have the first feedback. It's not only the publisher sees it, but also the market reacts to it, and then everybody jumps there, and then it becomes a new trend, like the current games, which is the escape room games, for example. Yes, the puzzle things, and in hindsight, you can always say, oh yeah, this was foreseeable. Nobody could foresee that the escape room games become so successful. Nobody could see that Magic the Gathering and the collectible card games become so successful. So in hindsight, it's easy. We don't know where the next one will crop up over the next year, the next 5 years, and suddenly we have a new trend. I mentioned some of the trends, some of the modern game mechanics, and if a new game mechanic comes up, or if something new comes up, then this may be a new trend. I can aspire, of course I aspired to create this new trend, but it's a lucky looking around in my many ideas, and yes, I have some which I find very strategically promising. There's no guarantee. First of all, I need to develop them into something which I believe perfect. Then I need to have a perfect publisher who believes in it. And then we will see. I mean, I give you a small example. We have recently published our Pick a Pen games. Pick a Pen games, I've almost in there on the desk. The idea here is that if you look at a color pencil, it actually has 6 sides. It's almost like a die. You can roll it and you get one of the 6 sides. We have many of our games where you actually roll and write. Yes, so you roll the dice, and then you have your pencil and you write down the results of the dice, and everybody has their play sheet and puts it in there. Now, it's always difficult to deal with colors because you only have a black pencil or a one color pencil. Now, what we have done is we have said we take 5 different color pencils. Each of them has 6 sides, and we print something on the side of the pencil. And so now you take these 5 color pencils and you roll them on the table. And each of them, like a die, has a result. But the fascinating thing is when I take the red pen, it shows a certain result. And then when I use the result on my play sheet, it becomes automatically red. And so you have suddenly introduced in a very, very simple way colors into what usually used to be a black and white game. Yes. And you can make many, we have colorful gardens here, we have crypts and treasures, and we have looking for sunken ships. So we have a whole line of them. And if you really look at it, it is taking a few pencils and realizing that they are a randomizer like a die, but they come with the extra ability that you can use them immediately to put down your results. You don't want to roll a red die, and then when you take the red dice, you take a red pencil and this is just too clumsy. So it's the elegance in there. And these are the little, when you look at it afterwards, you say, well, but that's so easy, that's so clear. Why didn't I see it? Yes. And so I'm very proud of this idea. It's a simple idea, but the simple ideas are sometimes the best. But I'm not to judge. We have got it out now since last year. We had an enormous start because after 2 weeks, the first edition was sold out. And then we were not able to deliver more for 3 months because we had to produce more. We means the publishers. But if it flies, is another thing. Does it mean now we will find many publishers who will take this line? Does it mean it becomes something established? And will other people work with this as well? So it becomes a trend. You know, if I go and protect it and say, this is all mine, nobody is allowed to do it, then it will not really fly. I mean, if Richard Garfield would have said, collectible card games are mine, nobody else is allowed to do it, you have a little universe. Of course, I don't like people copying my ideas, but if they add something new, as I did with collectible card, not with a deck building game and so on, or legacy, then this then strengthens the trend. It's not clear that pick a pen will fly very far, but it just shows that sometimes the little innovations with a big chunk of luck, you never know where it goes. This is just an example.
That's amazing, and I'm so excited. I really want to try out that game. Yeah, brilliant concept. Thank you for sharing about this. And so we talk about like the trends in game design. How about the trends in the economies or like in the tech industry? So as technology advance, right now there's a growing concern that AI might replace humans in various jobs. And so, having worked in the tech industry myself, I've seen many tech workers worried about what AI engineers could achieve. And when I shifted to the board game industry, I initially thought AI was far from taking over creative roles, but I learned that some game creators are already using AI to generate artwork. So that raises the questions about whether AI has a potential impact in game design, and what do you think about it? And if one day imagine an AI designer is capable of creating board games itself, what do you think? What could make a human better than AI in this field?
What you mention here is exactly the continuation of the experience. The world changes, and it will change many industry. It will change our lives. It will change our games. The AI has entered quite rapidly, if you want, and surprisingly, but it was foreseeable to come sometime. It was just not clear it would come so quickly. And so the AI is here. The AI will stay. The AI has been used a long time before for marketing purposes to see, you buy this and this, or you give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and this is all collected, and you get the right offers, the right advertising shown to you. This is business always drives innovation. If you can make money with it, people will be there and will be working on it. Yes, but now it has. I think AI has to Chat GPT and other products and the graphic products has really arrived in the common world with the common people, most of the common people. And so the question, as you ask, is what will that do to us? If I were a graphic designer, an illustrator, I'd be worried. If I were a somebody who does texts or translations, I mean translations, you look at DeepL or something, the translations are very good. I mean, not perfect, but it's a very good start. And the apps today, you just hold it over a foreign text and it comes up with your own text. So there are some very direct implications that some of the jobs will simply go away. As the jobs of the people who put coal into the trains when you had the trains running with steam, the jobs have gone away. Yes, so industrialization, when you had the weaving machines, the steam engines, it has revolutionized the world. IT, with respect to computers, has revolutionized the world and changed the world. And I think AI will do a similar thing. Where AI leads us to is again not really foreseeable. If we will have the big singularity of now we have a machine which is so much more intelligent than us, or the doomsday, now the machine will destroy us. You look at Terminator. Terminator is wonderful. It's one of my favorite movies, and it just, if you know it, it just forecasts so many things. If you look at some of the science fictions, 1984, you just wonder how suddenly things become even more radically true than in these science fiction things. I love science fiction, but I'm coming off the track. So I would be worried in a way. If I had some of the professions, we can easily be replaced. For a while, I relaxed and said, I tried out, of course, the AI and said, okay, make a dice game and you want to this and this and this. And I understood that the machine is completely stupid. The machine has no feeling for any fun or so, and it has no understanding yet. So I said, this will be many years until this thing can really do something. So I don't need to be worried. But the point here is, I'm looking from an old-fashioned point of view. I'm saying we have these dice games and we play these games. Who knows if this machine, the AI, does not create a completely new aspect of entertainment. Yes, you go into this meta world, you go into the non-physical virtual world, and you experience entertainment in a completely different way. And so even the AI possibly can't do a good dice game, dice games are no longer needed. So we simply get replaced. Yeah, you could also say, yeah, the steam engine can only run if I put coal in there. So they will need me because I need to put the coal in there. And then comes the electric engine, and then they say, oh, no steam engine. So if you see wider, the impact and the changes in our world will be very fundamental. So just concentrate on a little aspect and say, oh, I can't do dice games, I'm safe. No, we are not safe. Um, I see it more from a point of view, it will be wonderful, exciting. It will be dangerous. I think AI is dangerous. But it will be wonderfully exciting to watch all of this. I have seen computers come into the world. When I went to university, that was the first year that we had a computer at university. So I learned programming in the first year. Yes. So I was the first semester who had the ability and the possibility to learn programming. But I saw it. I know my teacher at school, he had a programmable pocket calculator. He was very proud of it. It was extremely expensive. Yes, it cost about €1,000 or Deutschmarks at that time. And change is coming in a much more fundamental way. I think when we look at the big changes, we are seeing it far too narrow. We look at, as I say, I look at my dice game. Change will just come like a steam engine over us, and it is not foreseeable. All I can say is, whatever comes, we will hopefully make best use of it, and as game designers, will still be able to contribute something to it and take the new opportunities. Desktop publishing came around, mobile phones came around. That doesn't mean it replaces games. It still needs to do something. Now we have an intelligence. An intelligence, well, maybe if the whole world is replaced and nobody needs to work anymore and everything is done by the intelligence, then the games are done by the intelligence as well. But then I think worrying about no game designers needed is our least of the worries. Yes. So from a broader point of view, we have a revolution. From a smaller point of view, we're still safe in our job.
That's very insightful answer. Thank you so much for sharing your opinion in this matter. Great. Yeah. And so I guess we only have a few minutes left. So maybe just quick questions about do you have any other hobbies outside of game design?
My mind is very often on the games, but yes, but so I should say two things here. One is, of course, I'm not just doing games and nothing else. I don't have children, but I have a wife, and I have family, and I have friends, and of course we do things. And I like to read science fiction, and so that's the genre I really like to explore. It comes into this what happens in the future and what could be. So it's kind of like a game designer or a scientist to ask what could be. So that fascinates me. I like to spend time in nature, even so I do that less now living in a big city of Munich. We have a nice English garden here, but I'm getting out not enough. The fascination of the games keeps me together. So I love history, so I would still look at the various history epochs, and they sometimes inspire games. But I don't have a great hobby. I think I've made my great hobby to my inspiration and to my calling. And the fascinating thing is when you look at the hobby here, and I don't feel the necessity to say, okay, look, I play the piano as well, and I do this and do this. No, I don't. But the fascinating thing about our industry, more than the other industries, is it's a very international community. all the different cultures come in there. So I was in Brazil last year for my first time to go to a fair. I got to know a lot of people. I got to know the culture. We are essentially daily dealing with our international partners. So there's a richness of culture coming in. There's a richness of friendships coming in. So the whole net, you go to fairs, you meet all the people, you talk, and it's a rich world. It's also a world to understand how production works, how supply chains work. Because through the pandemic, we suddenly had problems getting the materials from there. So what can we do to have a game? It's a game, yes, but which we can produce locally. So understanding the whole width of our industry, talking to factory owners, talking to producers, talking to people in China who will say, yes, we still have people. You look at the society, you look at saying that the parents are working and the grandparents are looking after the children. And what does that do for our products? So you cannot separate the isolated game. And games are a mirror of our world, but the whole world is also in our games. So it is a fascinating richness which through the games opens the door to the world. So it's not only that the games open the world to other people and the people come in, the games also let me go out and really experience the entire world. And that's really something I'm very grateful about and I'm really enjoying, so that I can do my hobby and at the same time be in the whole world.
That's amazing to hear. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that designing games could open doors to many of your relationship and opportunities to connecting with people. Amazing. Yeah. And one last question. So, do you have a favorite board game at the moment? It could be your game or somebody else.
I don't play many video games and digital games. For me, it's being together with other people is yeah, yeah. So the digital games is not where I'm really engaged. I love sitting around the table and playing with people. And for me, the games are a platform to meet other people and to engage in this role. It doesn't matter what background people have. Playing is a wonderful thing to bring people together. And through the playtesting, I get to know people, new people, and so on. Now, what is my favorite game? Uh, it's a very difficult call, because if I look at it, what do I do? We play every day, I said, but it's always a new game. So my favorite game is always the one which I'm most enthusiastic about at the moment, about playing and playtesting and designing. So today I have a favorite game, and when we play tonight, maybe it jumps to another one, and then I have a favorite game to put this onwards, and when it's done, then it loses my favoritism, because then I build something else and this is favorite. And I think that helps, because kind of dreaming and I would rather like to play this game, but I have to work on this one is not a good idea. So I think again, I'm lucky that my work is always my favorite game.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So I learned so much today, and I'm sure this interview will benefit all aspiring board game creators out there. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you everyone for listening to this interview organized by Your Turn. Stay tuned for other episodes coming up this year.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.